Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for sticking around. We're here with national co-chair and what's the
chief policy
advice. Oh, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions about the policy advice that you've given the presumptive Republican nominee Donald J. Trump. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Now, you've achieved friend of the show status, which is very exciting, and probably a personal and professional accomplishment for you that you didn't think that you'd ever see in your lifetime. So
we have an award we give after the show.
So you're welcome, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, thank you. I think
you remember what we filmed at the end the last time?
Yeah, I do.
I've given it to Maddie about 4 billion times. It's still not up there. I forgot to bring it again tonight.
Oh,
it's too much love for one frame to capture.
There you go. That's
Sam, you were going to you had a story queued up about the Trump bus,
right? Well, we had the opportunity in September 14th, before the Reagan the debate at the Reagan Library. Chuck and I flew down to Dallas Chuck Laudner to join the big entourage down there because we had the first big event at the American Airlines Center. 20,212 people, and it was pretty remarkable. It was great evening. So we had that, and then we got on literally got on a bus and with our bags and headed out to the airplane. And it was the first time I'd ever been on, so I grabbed my bag and I said, "Okay." They patted me down the first time to make sure I was cool, and I had my Trump button, and up the steps I went, and I went into the airplane, and it is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen as far as an airplane goes. And it's functional, and at the same time, it's just remarkable. It's beautiful, and it's very comfortable to fly.
Cool. So what? Hey, I don't know. I've never been on Trump's plane. I got to let that sit for what it is.
I could give you all the accoutrriments, but I don't. I could take up the rest of the hour.
We don't need to be jealous here, Sam.
Yeah.
The senior policy advisor.
Chief
policy advisor. So what do you focus on primarily?
Well, a lot of it depends on what the candidate wants to focus on. Mm-hmm. Now that's a rich statement in itself. Mm-hmm. So you just absorb that. I think that a lot of times we have a tremendous amount of material in the queue, mm-hmm. Because I've been working since August. Steve Miller joined us in late February, March, and Steve's done a tremendous job. He came from Jeff Sessions' Senate staff. He was his head of communications there. And so Steve does the day-to-day stuff. He travels with Mr. Trump. I work behind the scenes, and I do most of the outreach. Mm-hmm. I speak for the campaign to organizations. I just had a meeting with the top 10 largest charities in the United States. They're executive directors and government affairs people. So that's my interface. I do all the interface with organizations. I talk to, individuals that want to join the campaign and that kind of thing. So, and then I also work on big policy pieces. Mm-hmm. We've worked on higher education, land management. We've had an energy speech. We're working on modifications to our tax plan. We're going to add to our health care plan. I mean, those are the kinds of things that I do.
So when a lot of this is going to is probably going to sound tongue in cheek, but I'm interested in because I don't necessarily mean it to be, because it'd be very, as a Democrat, it'd be very easy for us to make fun of each other's
you can talk all you want, yeah.
And you know what I mean. But I'm
not going to take it personal.
Oh, of course not. Well, I don't mean it personally, but I do have a question, because I think in my sort of observing of the Trump campaign,
right,
I would think that from a policy advisor or from any staff advisor, anybody close to the candidate himself,
right,
the biggest challenge with Donald Trump seems to be message discipline, and I don't think that that's an unfair criticism, in the sense that he's not a Bernie Sanders who beats the same stump speech everywhere he goes. Trump speaks off the cuff. He sometimes gets himself into trouble doing that. Right. He goes off script. He says he's for raising the minimum wage, then he's against it. In sometimes in consecutive interviews, things like that. And what I'm wondering is, what pieces of when he goes off script, or when he kind of goes away from a traditional Republican, is he going off and sort of away from advice, or is he going more towards it? What's the dynamic there?
It's a great question, and I'll try to not give you too convoluted an answer, and I've gotten better at that. But
please get as convoluted as possible, because that's one thing that your candidate doesn't do.
No, I try not to. I try to be as straight as he is on most issues. I think a lot of times what it is that he hears the question a particular way, and then he answers based on what he hears, and I think we know what he's saying. Mm-hmm. We know what he's saying because we're around him. We know what he's saying, and I think sometimes people take him really literally, mm-hmm. and sometimes it's less artful than perhaps he would like. But we've never had any trouble understanding what he was saying. I think the issue is that we have a particular image or a particular template that we tend to want to put presidential candidates into, male or female, mm-hmm. it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. And I think what he is not in that template, will not fit in that template. And no matter how hard people push him into that template, he just won't go. And I will tell you, just to give you an example, I think after Wisconsin, we had some issues. And this is where the Manafort Wiley cadre came in. Paul's done a masterful job of interfacing with the RNC and getting us and doing those things.
Well, there's the real sense of and the media plays all of these kinds of things up. I think exaggerates them, but there was, after Wisconsin, a very sort of maybe brightly burning candle that Cruz might be out organizing us. We got to bring a guy like Manafort in, who wrangled delegates for Jerry Ford, who has been around forever, to kind of tamp this out. I think that was probably that narrative. I don't think had real legs. I think that Trump was way ahead.
I think what it was that again, it could have been which happens in campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
You could have been a reaction to some feeling, or he got advice from somebody that said, hey, you need to look at this. And so I think that all that turmoil lasted about 3 weeks, and then the night before New York, it looked to me like things had shifted back to the original group of people, and because we won just smashingly, and then the next week we won 5 states, and we won every county in 5 states, and it's just remarkable. And then we've been kind of going through this, and so we have some people that are working on coalition issues now. We have people who are working on congressional outreach. We have some folks that are working on kind of a SWAT team to counter the DNC and
mm-hmm.
so the RNC has a group of people doing that. We're starting to build the RNC is helping us build out our ground game. I don't think the Trump campaign will ever have, hundreds and hundreds of employees, except over in transition. That's a totally different issue. But we will have, the RNC will have the Army, and they'll be plugged into the Trump campaign.
Let me ask you this. I know you're dying to ask a question, but I've been thinking about this since he did it. One of the things that Doc and I have said routinely throughout the Republican primary, as each of the other 16 was ticked off, was establishment kiss of death. That became like a theme throughout, that the minute that somebody seemed to start moving towards that, and I don't know how to define.
As soon as the establishment picked them,
embraced them, right? Yeah. And whatever the establishment
Walker, is. And then there for a bit it was Perry, and then it was somebody else, and then a bunch of them, and then there at the end it was Rubio, and everybody went, geez, now Rubio's going to be our guy, and he went down, and then by default Cruz was left. And Dink, he's down.
But so you got to remember, the entire field, we only had 2 or 3 or 4 people that ever got above 15% polling.
Well, 4 of them got 95% of the vote.
Right, exactly.
And so here's my question then is related to like Paul Ryan. I mean, you're not going to get the Bush family, but that's another thing. But you're getting more of the quote unquote establishment endorsements now.
Right.
is there really a Republican establishment kiss of death of this electorate? Number one. Number two, as a follow-up, does the RNC or does the Republican Party?
All right, we're going to take a break because that's going to take more than just the next 13 seconds to answer.
Sure.
So we're going to be back with Sam Clovis, Donald Trump's national co-chair and chief policy advisor. We're excited that he is on the show tonight. He actually said he liked us. Holy cow!
He said he loved me.
Well, you know, you're more lovable.
I am. I am.
So we're going to be back right after this break with Sam Clovis. Please stay tuned. Without you, we couldn't do what we do.